And welcome back to LinkedIn Logs. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the Jobs Podcast for the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. Usually I don't let that thing go on, the theme song, go on for longer than 20 seconds for this show before I hop in. And here I am, sliding right into the DMs of the thing beforehand. Episode 26. Sorry for that pop of noise. Here we are on a gloomy Tuesday that's going to turn into a semi-sunny Tuesday and then lead into a gloomy Wednesday, then a dreary week. I love it. I love the weather. I like it when it's cold. I like it when it's mild. When it's too hot, I get too hot. I sweat. All right, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. So, here we are. Last week, I put out the episode of Constitutionals, and I'm going about my business. I'm doing my thing. And then, at some point, I get an email. I won't be too specific. I get an email from a potential job, a real potential job, and they want to do an interview. I do the interview. It's one of those online things. It's through a company. If I say the company, will immediately, people who've worked there will immediately know. Not at the company, but they'll know who I interviewed for. Let's just say it's somebody I've worked for before. I do this digital interview, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about these digital interviews. Again, I'm trying not to be too specific, but I want to talk about these digital interviews. And it looks like mine has been received. I just typed in the name of the company, not the company I interviewed for, but the company I interviewed for. Yeah. And it just says interview received. That's great. This is so specific. And the people who have done this process before will know exactly what company it is. Hopefully there's good news. We'll see. But I've done this process of interview, this style, this digital thing, this online thing. Let me turn off the iPad. I've done this style of interview before, at least 2 other times. And I think one of those times it actually worked in my favor. But it's such a... What is this noise? It is such a... I fixed it, don't worry. It is such a hands-off approach, and especially for a bigger company, I think it works in the long run because, A, it really helps the person who is interviewing. You know, it helps you weed out if you can talk. If that person can have an interview and have a conversation and talk and kind of put themselves up in a higher degree with these broad general questions that they ask. So the company I interviewed with, what they do is they use the software. It's all online, and you have to have a camera. They prefer they prefer you to do it on desktop, I assume. I don't know. I mean, I did it on the Mac here because there's no reason for me to do it on my phone or my iPad. It doesn't make sense. It's insane. No, I want to look professional. Got the lighting set up. I look exactly how I did now. I was fantastic, except I hid the microphone, pulled it right in front of me, turned the gain up a little bit so I could just talk in a regular, normal voice. They have you sit directly in the middle of the frame. This is so truly, if you don't know by now. They have you sit directly in the middle of the frame in a mock-up and like kind of a cutout of what a human would be, and the shoulders are like hunched up. The head is very round. So I did the best I could to get in there. I'm a big guy, baby. I can't fit into a small box like that. I can barely fit into this Henley. And they give you about 8 questions or so. The first and second time I did an interview like this with this company was it involved me answering 8 interview questions, 8 basically interview video questions. This third time, I think I did like 5 questions, like truly 4 or 5 video questions. And then the remainder, the other 3 or 4 were just like, do you live in the state? Do you need help with relocation? Which I thought was very, I don't know. I just felt like that's something that you could see on, and this isn't against the company who is hiring. This is against the company who is, whose technology that the other company is using. It just seemed like you didn't really need, that wasn't really necessary information. I'd rather answer 6 questions, video questions, and have to give a minute and a half answers, as opposed to just going through 4 or 5 and then clicking okay, yes, no through the others. I got the email. I did the thing. I did the interview. I think like the next day, or I think it was like a day or 2 later. Yeah, because it was Friday. So I think I got it on Wednesday, and then Friday was the only time I could like sit down and actually do it, because this part-time job is killing me, guys. And it was good. It's fantastic. I answered the questions. I think you get like 3 retries per question, and I think I only used 1 retry for a question. Mostly because, and it's very funny. I'll do the thing. I'll interview. I'll look into the camera. I'll do everything very professionally, and then when I know that there's a part of me, because I've been doing this talking thing for so long, I've been doing it more than the average person. I've been doing it more than the regular celebrity. Let's just say, come on. Oh, we're smartless. We sold our podcast for 3 figures again. You can't do this. You can't speak freely like I can, baby. And you haven't been doing it for 10 years. So I've been doing this for a while, and I know how to keep things flowing. I know how to pause at the right time. I know when to laugh at my own jokes. But there's a difference between interviewing in person and interviewing like this. And I'm very good at both of those things. The one part I'm not good at is the initial part where they look at your resume and the cover letter and all that jazz. So applying. And I've been doing this for a while, and it's easy for me to look at the question once and just, they're like, give a time. This wasn't one of the questions, but like, give a time of when you struggled the most at work. And then I can immediately refer back to something and then just rattle off an answer and make it sound coherent, and not just coherent, like it's an interesting story. Because let me give you a secret. They're not interesting stories. I did that. It was fun. I did it, and it was, I hopefully, something good comes out of that. I know, to me, knowing the company that I was I was applied for, knowing the company, the position I'm being interviewing for, they should be hiring pretty quickly. I hope so. We'll see. Hopefully next week's episode is new job. That'd be a great title. Episode 27, new job. Putting it out there. I am putting it out there into the universe. I'm looking at the application status. It says in progress. Hopefully it says offer thrown or offer sent. Oh God, I hope so. I can't keep doing this. Now, I think about this. Would I continue doing the podcast? The answer is unequivocally yes. The second thing is, would I talk smack about the company? It's not talking smack. I give every company that I've talked about on this show, with the exception of Bounce TV, I've talked about with reverence. And I've given solutions. There's a difference. I'll call out Bounce TV. I'll call out Scripps, man. Screw those people. And screw the HR department. Screw my supervisor. That's it. I mean, it's crazy to, like, in a pandemic, be one of 5 people in a giant office building in Buckhead. To the only choice, everyone else gets to work from home, and the only option I have is to drive in because I can't get the files or whatever on my home computer. And for you, a supervisor, to never come in, ever. And for me to, they give concessions to the editors, they give concessions to everybody else. They get internet stuff, they get like vouchers and stuff. And I'm like, hey, can I get $10 for gas? And she's like, no. You're not coming in here. Anyway, I had a lot of issues with that job. This next one comes from Variety, written by Todd Spangler. Vice will cease publishing on Vice.com and lay off several hundred staffers, the CEO says. Late last week, it was noted that Vice, which has been in giant trouble as of late, is in another transformation process of its own. It is laying off a lot of people, and it's going to become mostly a vertical and social. A video and social, vertical network. When I'm saying vertical, I mean it's. I don't mean the style of video is going to be vertical, which it will be. But I'm saying they're going to be focusing on the video stuff more so than the writing. This is the 3rd or 4th time in the past. I'm not talking about layoffs because they've had a ton of layoffs in the past couple of years. This is the 3rd or 4th time this is transformed. Vice is transformed. A couple of years ago, they, speaking of verticals, got rid of Waypoint, which is their gaming vertical, and I think they narrowed everything down to basically like Noisy and Munchies and Vice and like some other Motherboard and some other stuff. But Vice used to be this big internet darling on the same side of BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed used to be a giant internet darling, and I'll talk about this in the Constitutionals later on this week. But these two used to be, Vice and BuzzFeed were the next iteration of news. They were these young millennial-driven and I guess Generation X-driven newsprints for online ages, and for that allowed people to speak freely about everything from drugs to sex to race to things that you just normally wouldn't get with traditional news media like the New York Times or with Fox or MSNBC or CNN or Washington Post or Wall Street Journal or even NPR. They were able to do things faster and better than many of those outlets. But now Vice Media Group is just I guess essentially going under. It's the slowest sinking ship I've seen in a long time. In a memo to Vice employees Thursday, CEO Bruce Dixon said the company will be cutting, quote, several hundred jobs in the next week. So that means this week we're just going to see a lot of people out of work. Dixon also wrote that Vice Media Group is, quote, in advanced discussions to sell Refinery 29, which is the women-focused part of the company, that it bought in 2019 for $400 million. That was a huge acquisition for them because they didn't have anything like Refinery 29. Refinery 29, wasn't that created by, let's see, God, I don't know. I thought that was created by the AV Club and like kind of that outlet, but I don't think that's true. The company, and Vice, like this, again, this is a big deal. Years ago, it was valued at $5.7 billion. Disney bought them. Disney didn't buy them. Disney invested in them, right? I think it was Disney, Vice. Vice.com. I'm almost positive that Disney had something to do with their seed money. Let's see. Yeah, both Fox and Disney invested in them. And then at some point, I think Disney wrote down $400 million of investment. Back in 2015, this comes from the New York Times, Disney invested millions of dollars in Vice, and they were exploring to buy the company for more than $3 billion. Wow. This is an article written by Lauren Hirsch and Benjamin Mullen. Vice is said to be headed for bankruptcy. This is back in May 2023. We're almost coming up on the year of that. Vice made layoffs last year. They canceled shows like Vice News and Vice News Tonight. Vice Media had over 900 employees worldwide after those layoffs. At some point, they had 3,000. This used to be one of the biggest media companies in the new media company. I'll call it new media in the world. Now we have this from Variety, written by Jennifer Moss. Process of elimination: why layoffs are hitting tech, gaming, media, despite their steep costs. Video games cost a lot of money to make. Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5 cost so much money. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, even though it came out in a not so good state, costs a lot of money. The Xbox Series X itself costs a lot of money. The stuff they're doing with cloud gaming, that's a lot of money. But we're seeing companies lay off left and right. It seems that truly every single week there's a different company affected. We had Noggin be affected. Last week at Paramount, Viacom. Disney's been affected. Warner's been affected. Microsoft cut 1,900 employees across Xbox and Activision Blizzard. Amazon eliminated several hundred roles at Prime Video and its studio Twitch, and even Audible. Google's company, Alphabet, the parent company, trimmed payrolls by several hundred. CNN, we're seeing them expecting to cut salaries of anchors. People are getting laid off left and right. Experts say it's a kind of copycat effect that can happen across industries when job cuts start occurring. It's pressure from investors, says Wharton School professor of management Peter Capelli. For example, if investors decide a big tech company has overhired and pressure it to make layoffs, those adjacent to it feel compelled to do the same, he says. And then it creates this norm that you're seeing right now. There's a Nelson Peltz, I believe, is the activist investor at Disney. He's an activist investor. I don't think he works for Disney proper, but he constantly, every single quarter, has something to say about how the company is run and saying that they need to focus on AI and they need to, basically kill off. I'm making this up, but like kill off FXX, get rid of Hulu, put everything on Disney Plus. Do this, do that. They say these activist investors say things that sometimes could help a company, but other times just don't really jive with what's going on with how companies are supposed to be run. But more often than not, these investors or these analysts will say, because they're essentially hired consultants. Some of them, not a lot of them are being hired by companies, but some of them are. And whether their input is needed or not, somebody will be at Vice or see Vice's numbers and go, Vice, you need to lay off X amount of people because you have this much money and you're going to have this much money if you're able, you'll have much more if you're able to lay people off and get above board and this and that and the other thing. Companies that do these things tend to have the profit underperformance compared to companies that aren't doing layoffs, and that can last as long as 3 years, says Harvard Business School professor Sandra Sucker. That's because the total cost of job cuts includes severance, benefits, helping former workers find employment. There are also less tangible drawbacks. Layoffs result in, quote, disengaged and frightened employees, Sutter says. When you think about this in human terms, they're saying to people, you're okay and good as you are until I decide you're not. Which is how I felt at Bounce TV when EW Scripps finalized their acquisition of the company, and I was let go of a video. Oh man, by somebody who soon became who got her own. After I asked about my own promotion, I just wanted more. I just wanted a little bit more money, truly. She got a promotion. She got a giant promotion. She was named Vice something. Very true. And I was canned. We're going to see more cuts in the gaming sector, even at bigger companies. I think Toys for Bob, which did both the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro collections and new games, they saw some losses. Again, with this Microsoft Activision Blizzard thing, we knew that was going to happen. But major game studios are shifting their focus from growth to profitability, similar to media companies' strategy for their streaming businesses, and are doubling down on tentpole franchises, which means that they're going to be spending some money. You're going to see bigger budgets. And then they're going to be sending whatever money they make from, Sony, whatever money they make from Spider-Man 2, whatever money's made from for Nintendo from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Then they're going to be able, I'll name Microsoft, whatever money's made from Halo Infinite, they're gonna take or Game Pass, I guess at this point, they're going to take that money, they're going to bring it in, and then they're going to be more willing to dole it out to indies and to AA games instead of AAA games, and to maybe even some mobile stuff, because that's where the profit is right now. Mobile games and looter shooters, all that crap. But we're seeing it seems unfair, and it truly is. But this is how it's going to be, at least until they start seeing some type of profit. I don't know what it is. I mean, inflation numbers aren't as bad. You see that on the news all the time. I see it on Squawk Box. I see it on CNN. I see it on CBS. They say inflation numbers aren't that bad. When is the economy going to respond? Or when are companies going to respond to that part of the economy? Are they just being trepidatious? Are they playing it safe? Are they, when you look at Netflix and Hulu and ABC and Fox broadcasting and NBC, when you see all these networks canceling shows or pulling back and not really buying as many shows as they used to, Peak TV is going down, as John Landgraf, the president of FX, said a couple weeks ago. When we used to have I think at our highest point we had 900 plus new shows, 900 plus new shows, and now we're down to like 600 or 700 new shows, or 800. I don't know. I forgot the numbers. This is a long time ago. 2 weeks. but when we see that these when we're pulling back from Peak TV and events of that nature, and now we're seeing kind of a resurgence of cable-like platforms with Warner Brothers and Disney and Fox teaming up for this sports streamer. People gravitating towards YouTube TV for a cable for just to be able to get like sports and cable channels together for this digital cable bundles. When we see Peacock and Paramount Plus being bundled in a Verizon plan, that's not true. But when we see things like that, it makes me wonder if we're going to see a resurgence of Peak TV, and in that effort, a resurgence of these jobs, of companies who laid off 2,000 people, coming back a couple months later and going, okay, now we're ready to rehire again because we got this new project in the works, or we've got a bunch of shows in development and we need you back. Is it safe to be in these industries any longer? I mean, it's in some cases it's easier to be in these industries, but I mean, even if you look at there's a show called oh god, I think that's what it. Let me say, hold on. What is there's a show that There's Johnny. There's a show called There's Johnny that was created by Paul Reiser. And the pilot of the show, the main character played by Ian Nelson, just quite literally graduates, I think, high school or college. I don't know. I don't remember. But it's 19, what year is it? 1970 something? Yeah, 1970 something. And he just goes to Hollywood and he walks onto the lot where Johnny Carson's show was filmed, and the Tonight Show. And he's like, I want a job. And then they just hire him. But again, that's 1970 something when you could do something along those lines. But now you can't. So obviously you have to stand out in some form of fashion, whether that be if you want to get hired and do video game things. Okay, well, maybe you create your own video game. Maybe you develop your own video game at home in your free time, or maybe you become a streamer on Twitch and YouTube. Maybe you review games for your local college, and then that blossoms into you getting freelance opportunities at IGN, which then turns into getting a full-time at IGN or some other gaming outlet. But there's so many ways to get into the gaming media sphere, or the news media sphere, or the television world, or the film world. Tech. So it's harder for people to pay attention unless you're being as loud as possible. And even then, that it doesn't necessarily work. I'm living proof. So when you have disruptors like BuzzFeed and like Vice, and they make such a calamity for several years, and then only to see them go the way of the dinosaur, even more so than where New York Times and Wall Street Journal are right now, because they've made the pivot. I mean, but also it's because they are the storied names. Washington Post, NPR. Those are the storied names besides Vice and BuzzFeed. Ahead of Vice and BuzzFeed. Is this just a yo-yo? We're at the down point, and the yo-yo's spinning on the ground. Is it gonna come back up, or are we gonna walk the dog? We go around the world. We're gonna do what is it? Not the handkerchief. What is that thing called? Cat's cradle. We're gonna do the cat's cradle. All right, I'm losing the through line, and this episode is long enough. Hey, listen, if you liked what you heard here, head to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where I talk to your favorite people in the entertainment industry. More recently, I just talked to Chris Martin. No, not Chris Martin from Coldplay, comedian Chris Martin. I didn't want to do that, but I had to. We had a very delightful conversation. It was fantastic. He's very funny. He's British. And it was just a great conversation all around. We talked about his new stand-up album, Above Average Comedian. I'm not reading the copy or anything. This is all at the top of my head. I'm horrible at math, but boy, oh boy, can I remember small details. So check that out. You can listen to the audio version under the Constitutionals podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch a video version under the interviews on youtube.com/cpluscomedy. You can also check out the other podcast, Late Night Lately, which is the late night show. Video version on youtube.com/cpluscomedy. If you're listening to the audio version of the show, you can check out the video version at the same YouTube channel. You can, what is it? I got to press play. Oh God, it's not pressing play. Oh my God. The music. Okay, Spotify is screwing up with me. The music did not play, and I was gonna go out and I was gonna have just the whole thing, the whole song play, and it was gonna be so professional, and everybody was gonna be like, "Oh, that guy's really good." So now I can't do that. That is unfortunate. I have to put it in post. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at C Plus Comedy, me at Chad Black White. Thank you for listening. And if the music's playing in post, then I've done my job. And if not, too bad. Goodbye.